Welcome to Highland League Weekly, the podcast. I'm Ryan Cryle, joined as always by Callum Law and Paul Third as we discuss all 9 matches that took place in the Breedon Highland League over the weekend. Just a reminder, this is taken from our main Highland League Weekly web show over on the Press and Journal website. This week we've got highlights of Keith against Huntley, a derby game for you. You need subscriber though to watch those on the main show, but the good news is you can subscribe at the moment via our sports pack that will get you access to all of our sports content, including the latest on the Highland League and Highland League Weekly. Okay, Keith 2, Huntley 0 in this one. Keith now up and running for the season. Interestingly, a 9-goal swing since the last time the teams met back in March, I think it was, Callum, but Mikey Ironside and a Jack Searle beauty were the goals that made the difference on the day.
You mentioned that last game in March. That was a bit of a sort of oddity in terms of Keith Huntley games, because Keith had Ryan Robertson sent off and then Craig Reid got injured and they didn't have a sub-goalie and Scotty Barron went and goal and ended up 7-0. But in terms of Saturday's game, I think, although Craig Ewan said in his interview afterwards he still feels it can be better, and I can understand where he's coming from, I think that really for Keith is a sort of blueprint in terms of what you'd be looking for in terms of hard to beat, hard working, disciplined, good shape, and then when they did get the ball, they looked good with it and they caused problems, particularly in the counter at times. But as Craig said as well, they do now have players like Sarto, Jack Searle that are on loan, Jordan Cooper, Horace Ormsby. They've got Nathan McEwen, although he was injured on Saturday, but they've got players in their team who can look after the ball, and they maybe still feel, I think, as it's been discussed before, but they probably still feel one thing they maybe lack is that out-and-out number 9 that would score 15 or 20 goals in a season. But you know, they have got good players there, and they've got guys chipping in. I mean, you look at the goals on Saturday. I mean, I was laughing about Mikey Ironside was playing right back and was just about the most advanced player and was in there heading in the opening goal, but it was a really good header. And then the second one was a bonny strike for Jack Searle, really out of the blue, and you know, the Keith gang will be hoping he can bang in a few more like that ultimately. And if he can, then he could, you know, make a real difference for them. They could have a really good season. I think if you look the other way, for Huntley, they never really got going. And as Colin Charles said afterwards, there was never really a moment where you could say they forced Craig Reid into a really good save or put Keith under a great deal of pressure. I mean, even in the sort of closing 15-20 minutes, they had a lot of territory, but you never really felt they were going to score, and that's kind of not in keeping with how they've played so far this season. But you know, I think it's credit to Keith really for the way they sort of nullified Huntley's threat ultimately.
Callum Youngson's red card for Huntley sounded like he admitted himself that he'd mucked up, so we can't really have any issues with it, can we?
No, it's just, I mean, it's one of them, I think, just needless, and maybe sums up their day a wee bit in terms of just frustration, like he was booked for dissent, and then the wee incident at the end with the two of them sort of pushing each other, like by the letter of the law, it's probably his 2 bookings, but at the same time, Ian and Thirdy were speaking about off air, it's like if the referee Kevin Murray just says, Ken, it's the last 30 seconds of the game, get on with it, and doesn't book either of them, does anybody really complain? No, but by the letter of the law, it's a second booking, so he had to go ultimately.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the other 8 matches that took place in the Breedon Highland League on Saturday. We'll start with Brechin. I believe this has them now off the top of the standings, drawing 1-1 at home to Clachnacuddin, another good result for Clach. Mitch Taylor was sent off after the break for Brechin, but they still took the lead through player assistant manager Paul Watson. Was then a penalty, though, for Clachnacuddin, which James Anderson, I think it was saved initially. Josh Meekins put in the rebound. Connor Gethins, the Clach boss, I noticed he was talking about budgets and how 5th place is still their aim this season, which is a bit different in tone from last week, where he was definitely seemingly implying that they wanted to finish higher than that. But yeah, I mean, it's a better point for Clachnacuddin.
I think Connor Gethins might disagree with you there, because I think from what I've seen of this game as well in highlights, I think over the piece, Clach were probably the more threatening and created the better chances. Now, but at the same token, I think it's one where both managers weren't particularly happy, because from Clach's point of view, I think they felt with the play they had that only getting a draw was maybe a wee bit of a disappointment, albeit when you fall behind quite late on, you'd probably take it. But then on the flip side, for Brechin getting in front, I think on 82 minutes, they would probably back themselves to see the game out for that position. And I think they were a wee bit aggrieved with the penalty as well, because I think they felt it was handball against Fraser McLeod. I think they felt it was quite close range and where there wasn't really a lot he could do, but it was given. And I mean, Josh Meekins, who I think, going by what I've watched, I think he was sort of thrown on. He was just back for injury, first appearance of the season. I think he was sort of thrown on up top when it was 1-0, and, you know, maybe wouldn't have been your most likely goal scorer you might have picked for Clach, but he followed in well at the penalty and earned him a point. And I mean, ultimately, although, as I'm saying, neither's maybe particularly chuffed, Brechin 20 points out of 24 and Clach 17 out of 24. They're both going along nicely.
Yeah, James Anderson letting me down in the top goal scorer race there when not converting that penalty.
Kept Grady out.
Yeah, well.
Did help you in that sense.
Who would have bet on both of those players failing the notch at the weekend? Brora 2, Lossiemouth 0 at the weekend. Shane Sutherland and then Ben Gardner eventually skewing the points for Brora. But it sounded like this one was pretty tight in the first half.
It was. Lossie were competitive and they had good chances as well up at Dudgeon Park. 2-0 was probably the right outcome. It should have been 3 though, I have to say. There's a goal that's not given.
Chalked off.
It's quite incredible. Stuart Knight punches the ball off the back of, is it Oliver Green's head?
Green,
and it just rebounds back to Jordan McRae to head in practically on the goal line. But the referee, Scott Donoghue, sees a foul that I've watched it back. I don't know what he saw. No, and
Can't raise your hand.
No,
I think so.
There's nothing happened. I don't know.
I think Stuart Knight himself, if he was being honest, would probably say he got away with one there, but that's bizarre.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't affect the result in the end. Brora will take the points and move on. But yeah, it's a decent showing from Lossie in a tough venue.
Yes. It's interesting with Brora though. It's like you speak to people at Brora and they sort of say that they haven't really hit top gear yet, but to have 21 points out of 24 and be top of the league without maybe being at their absolute best is very good go.
Yeah. Team who seemed to be pretty near their best the weekend, Banks O Dee, who won 5-0 at home to Devon Vale. Dee took control of the match in the first half with goals from Joe Buckie, Blackie McLeod, Mark Gilmore and Alex Balfour. Gilmore then rounded out the scoring in the second half. It did sound like in this game that Dee maybe ripped Vale apart a little bit.
So certainly in the first half, I think that would be fair. I think Gary Wood said afterwards that Devon Vale were nowhere near the standards they expect, or indeed the standards have shown already this season. I mean, you only go back as far as last week when they drew with Brechin. You know, they've sort of showed what they can do there, and then they clearly didn't reach those levels on Saturday. And if you're sort of a bit off it, you'll get punished. And Banks O Dee now, they're maybe just starting to click into gear. You know, it's a good win on Saturday, 5-0, and beat Buckie last weekend, getting a couple of maybe sort of more of their a couple of their more influential players back as well, and maybe they're just starting to sort of return to what we would expect, because that's certainly before a ball was kicked on Saturday. I fancied that game at Spain Park to be quite tight, but it was an emphatic Dee victory. Yeah.
Forest Mechanics 0, Turriff United 3. Now, this is a game I think we characterise as like the importance of big moments. Callum Frame, penalty in 18 minutes for Forest, saved. Turriff then scored a penalty of their own via Andy Watt on 24 minutes. Miller Keir and Timmy Fatona then adding further gloss to the scoreline for Turriff, but both managers referencing the impact of that first penalty being saved.
I think there's no question that was a really potentially a turning point, a really crucial moment in terms of the outcome, because both Stephen McDonald and Warren Cummins were in agreement that Forrest had started the better of the two, and I think Steve McDonald felt if they'd converted that penalty, he sort of fancied them to go on and build on that and get someone out of the game. But then Cammy Reid makes a good save for Turriff, and then within a short period Turriff go up the other end and they score, and that sort of seemed to switch the momentum of the game, and Turriff have ended up running out 3-0 winners. I mean, the second and third goals although I know Forrest were disappointed with the defending, the second goal's a really good finish for Miller Keir, 6th of the season for him, and then Timmy Fatona with a bit of sort of individual brilliance for the third, just racing down the right and then coming in and a good finish beyond Sean McCarthy. So, I mean, from Turriff's point of view, they're delighted with that. After sort of 4 games in the league without a win, where, we saw them last week against Brora. They haven't played badly in some of those games or in spells in those games, but not really had much reward. But they got a very good away win on Saturday. But for the Cans, like, linked to the whole penalty thing, Steve McDonald was sort of saying afterwards that he feels they're still too much of a sort of confidence team at the moment, and he says that, that something goes wrong for them or goes against them, and he says they seem to sort of
can't quite shake it off.
I can't shake it off. Our heads go down or they fold a wee bit too easily, and that's sort of something that's concerning him at the moment, because that's
the 3 in a row drop points
where you sort of see maybe the teams right at the top of the league, for example, would maybe be able to overcome that setback, whereas he maybe feels at the moment with Forrest are not quite doing that, which is frustrating, because they did, as you say, I think that's three league games now they haven't won in, which after sort of the start they'd had in the first 4 or 5 games, that's a bit disappointing. But they're still kind of saying about their confidence team on their day. They're a very good team, so they can certainly bounce back. And big game on Tuesday for them as well, at home to Cally Thistle in the semi-final in the North of Scotland Cup. So if they could win that game and get back in a cup final, that would be an appropriate response, I would say.
Okay, Fraserburgh 7, Nairn County 0. 2 teams here, 30. Like, I find them both quite unpredictable. Like, I feel like, well, Nairn have had what, a 3-0 win this season, I seem to recall.
4-0 win.
4-0 win. And 7-0 they're getting beaten the next week. But I know Fraserburgh, on their day, can do that to a lot of the teams in the league. From 29 minutes, the Broch scored 6 in half an hour. Kieran Simpson heading in twice. Fraser Stewart getting his first goal for the club. Scott Barber getting his 1000th or whatever that is. Greg Buckie and then Stewart again added further gloss. Final minute, Flynn Mackay made it 7. What's your take on this one?
We could fill the whole episode on this game. Right, you mentioned Scott Barber. It's 5 assists in that game alone. We talk so often about the amount of goals he's scored and how many games he's played and all that sort of thing. And he is a quality, but the amount of goals he must set up for teammates during his career is astonishing.
Does anyone count those?
He'll know.
Probably is. If anyone does, it'll be him.
He'll know. But this game for me turns on the second goal, because Nicky Corner, who covers a lot of the Fraserburgh games, shout out to Nicky, he's captured this brilliantly. The ball goes out for a goal kick, it looks like. It does look like a goal kick, and the linesman seems to flag for a goal kick. It looks that way. But Scott Barber picks up the ball and runs along to the corner flag to take the corner, and the corner is ultimately given. Kieran Simpson then scores his 2nd of the game. Wayne McIntosh is like, linesman, did you not just flag for a goal kick there? The referee's called a cross. This is all while they're still celebrating the 2nd goal being scored, and Wayne McIntosh is then booked. Nairn
knew that was coming.
Wrongly as well, because he didn't swear and he was abusive.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the outcome.
Yeah, and they take centre, lose the ball. Fraserburgh goes straight off a park and make it 3-0, and it's game over. And then the collapse inevitably follows, because it's down the slope in the second half, and the Broch can hurt you when they're on top, and that's what they did. Then, of course, there is the red card, which isn't a controversial moment, I have to say. Ben Kelly had a jab on him that Alexander Usyk would be proud of. But I also have to say, Kieran Simpson's got a hell of a jaw on him, because he took it well to take the blow. But yeah, it's that just summed up the frustration for Nairn. A tough afternoon, very good from Fraserburgh, but a few iffy moments in that game.
Well worth the tenner entry.
Oh, definitely.
Well, it's £12. But still,
I would have paid more. Yeah. It's wild stuff.
Inverurie Locos won, Wick Academy won on Saturday. Ruben Skie, who was recently recalled from a loan at Keith, gave Locos a dream start in the second minute, but the lead lasted only 3 minutes because George Ewing levelled for Academy. I mean, Gary Manson, the happier boss. I mean, if you're Locos, you take the leads. It's cliche perhaps, but like, just hold on to it for a bit longer.
It's Dean Donaldson's familiar complaint. He said that game sums up their season so far. They score and concede straight away. To be fair, George Ewing's goal for Wick is top drawer. Excellent. Yeah, Ruben Greer finishes well. Ewing's, he takes it down on the spin and hammers it into the top corner. But yeah, I think as Gary Manson touched on, I've been here a lot of times as a player and a manager, and positive results for Wick at Harlow Park are few and far between, so he's very happy to take a point and go back up the road. Locos, they need to be tighter at the back. You can't give away a goal when you've just taken the lead. It's the old cliche, when you're most vulnerable, and it's proven to be the case for Locos.
In fairness to Inverurie, look at the last three now. They've had 2 draws and a win, 5 out of 9. And I think they're that far away from maybe just sort of start to pick up a few wins and a bounce. Like compared with maybe a few weeks ago, the signs are more positive now, I would say.
Okay. Rothes won, Buckie Thistle 4. Josh Peters scoring twice, either side of an Innes Mackay header to give Buckie a 3-0 lead. Sam Rothney, just 16, pulled one back for Rothes, but on 55 minutes, Aaron Nicholson made it 4-1 to the away team. Pretty comprehensive, this one, for Buckie.
Yeah, things. Important though for the Jags after 3 straight league defeats, and I think with the Evening Express Aberdeenshire Cup semi-final coming up on Wednesday against Aberdeen, they needed to get back to winning ways. For Rothes, again, a familiar tale. I think, how was it Ronnie Sharp phrased it? We can't seem to hold the ball up, we can't be clinical enough, and it's just inviting pressure back on, and the goals we're giving away are so cheap. I mean, he's still yet to get his first win as Rothes boss. It's I'm going to repeat what I said last week. It's going to be a tough old season for them by the looks of things.
The other thing I would say quickly after this game is before kick-off, there was a minute's applause in memory of Sandra Patterson, who sadly died age 73 last Tuesday. She was Buckie's longest-serving committee member. She'd been involved since 1989. She was worked in the Pie Hut, and then she was the boardroom host at Victoria Park, and like she's known to a lot of people in the Highland League, and obviously people connected with Buckie and things. And as somebody who like knew her just for going to games and that, I'd just like to pass on our condolences to Sandra's family and friends, and also to folk at Buckie, because she was one of these sort of salt of the earth people in Highland League, one of the nicest people you could ever meet. And I think anybody that sort of come across Sandra wouldn't really have anything bad to say about her. She was just a really nice, genuine person. And as I think everyone that's ever come across Sandra would also remark, is her home bacon was
the best in business.
Absolutely superb, like different class. I mean, there's been many a midweeker at Buckie where it's maybe on the chilly side, where you'd go in at half time and that, and you'd kind of be sorely tempted to just remain in the boardroom with the home bacon rather than go back out for the second half. But no, Sandra was a really nice person, so our thoughts and condolences to her family and friends.
Okay, one more game to discuss from Saturday. Strathspey Thistle 1, Formartine United 2. The big news before this game: Mike McLean is back at Formartine United, the artillery master for United. But Julian Wade actually scored their 2 goals in this one. Josh Race had levelled for Strathspey, but yes, the Dominican international completing his double and sealing all 3 points for the visitors. And in the context of this season, a good result that for Formartine?
Aye, very much so. And I think I was just going to say quickly about the Matthew McLean thing. It's like his work was originally sort of from the Glasgow area, and he ended up in the northeast through work, and he'd been at Formartine the last 3 seasons, but his job took him back down to the central belt, but quite quickly he's ended up back in the northeast again. So I know Stuart Anderson was delighted by that, to just quickly get him re-signed. And it's another good, we've seen what he's given them over the past few years, so another good player to bring in. And as you said, Ryan, another good result. And I mean, Julian Wade, maybe just with some of the signings Formartine have made, the likes of us, we maybe haven't been speaking about him quite so much, but he's sort of showing his 4 goals now, and he's showing, again, that he's still a very good player, and he causes a real threat to any defence he comes up against. And he's popped up with 2 important goals again on Saturday. And you look at Formartine's start, 18 points out of 24. It's still yet to lose. It's very positive overall for Strathspey. I know Ryan Essen was a lot happier than he was the week before with the 6-0 defeat at Clach. He felt they were a lot more competitive. I think he was just slightly frustrated. I think it was sort of both boxes in terms of, I think he felt in the final third they didn't sort of quite click as they have done in some games, and then at the other end I think he felt the second goal especially, I think it was just a long ball down the middle that they could have dealt with that better. But certainly for Strathspey, if you're competing in games like that on Saturday, it's a good basis to build on, whereas what we saw last weekend against Clach wasn't really a true reflection of what they are this season.
I didn't know the scores on Saturday, and then my phone pinged at some point sort of on Saturday evening, and it was Juju7_baller has followed P&J Sport. I was like, oh, here we go. Somebody said a good afternoon. Because the only time you get Highland League players following the accounts is when they've scored a couple of goals or they've done something else and they want to see their headlines. Anyway, let's have a look at the latest Breedon Highland League standings. Okay, that's it for Highland League Weekly, the podcast this week. Thanks to Callum and Paul for joining me. Just a reminder, our main Highland League Weekly web show this week features highlights of Keith against Huntley from the weekend. If you want to watch that though, you have to be a subscriber to the P&J. Good news is you can subscribe at the moment via our sports pack and get access to all of our sports content, including all the latest from Highland League and Highland League Weekly. Till we see you next, please keep up to date with us on social media. We've got our X page and we've also got our Facebook group that you can join. But yes, until we see you next, please enjoy the games, whichever games you're watching.